ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतः पदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे रामो राम रामो हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all of you all to our Gita classes. First of all, I am sorry that we have not been having classes live for quite some time now. But I am hoping and praying that all of you all are listening to the audios of the Gita classes regularly as much as possible. I would love to know from you all, how many of you all are really following the Gita class audios and all that. You can drop on the chat so I'll know who all are really following the audios and listening to the Gita classes regularly. So I'm making sure that every week we are having at least one lecture dropped so that the continuity is there and so that the learning of the Gita continues whether I'm traveling or not. And I will make it a point that every month at least 1 or 2 lectures I'll do live for sure. So whichever days of the month, Tuesdays, and I'm not traveling and I'm available, I will definitely prioritize and take the live classes as much as I can, like we're doing today. And especially when I know there is an important topic, I'll try my best to prioritize that. Like today's session is one of the most crucial and one of the most important sessions of the Gita. In fact, this session that we're going to be discussing today is a very revolutionary way of looking at the idea of mind control and the idea of understanding how to deal with our minds. And the discussion between Krishna and Arjun is very, very amazing because it goes so deep into the concept of dealing with our minds. And I'm sure all of us are struggling with our minds and struggling with dealing with what the mind throws at us. So this session is really going to be important from that perspective, and it's going to really give us a lot of direction and hope in our personal lives. Thank you all very much for replying on the chat, and very grateful to know that so many of you all are hearing the classes regularly and following the Gita learning. So today's session on which is based on the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is known as Dhyana Yoga, is a very special session because Arjun is trying to be very honest with his situation. And Krishna has been speaking about the concept of dhyana in this whole chapter. And he's been talking so much about the idea of focus. Of course, Krishna in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he begins by talking about the Ashtanga Yoga process. And at the end of Krishna's description of the Ashtanga Yoga and recommending the whole idea of Ashtanga Yoga, Arjun asks this question. And Arjun is almost negating everything that Krishna said. He's almost challenging everything that Krishna has said in terms of his own capacity. So the system that Krishna is speaking about, the Ashtanga Yoga system, is a very complicated and a very difficult system. One of the most important needs of that system is to have a peaceful mind. And when someone without a peaceful mind does that, he will not get the results. So the prerequisite for Ashtanga Yoga is peace of mind. And Arjuna is asking this question to tell Krishna what is the state of his mind. And if Arjuna is saying this, what is our position? So let us see first what Arjuna is trying to say, and then we will understand what it really means. So Arjuna, his question is not exactly a question, it's almost like a very honest opening of the heart to Krishna. So in this very beautiful verse, which is the 34th verse of this chapter, Krishna says, Chanchalahi mana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasya nigraham manye vayur iva shudushkaram. He says, for the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So look at the example that he's giving. He's saying, I can control the raging wind. Now, what does it mean to control the raging wind? I mean, can anybody control a tornado or a hurricane or even a very fast blowing wind? Obviously, no one can, but Arjun can. Why? Because he has Divyastra. And the kind of weapons that Arjun has, with those weapons, he can actually control the raging wind. So why is Arjun giving the example here of a raging wind? Because Arjun actually has the ability to control the raging wind, but he's saying, I can't control my mind. So imagine the honesty of Arjun. Imagine the situation of Arjun and his way of looking at it. So let us analyze the words that Arjuna is using in this particular verse. So what is he saying? He's using a couple of words to describe the state of the mind. The first thing he says is Chanchalahi mana Krishna. Chanchala. The first quality of the mind is Chanchala. It is restless. So if our mind is in conflict, not balanced with our body and the needs of the soul, there is a fundamental disunity in our body. Only if we have unity within ourselves can we create unity in the world around us. So here we find the first question that Arjuna is saying, the first nature of the mind that Arjuna is talking about, his own mind. He says it is Chanchal. There was one lady who was walking to her office one day. And as she was walking to her office, on the way, she saw a shop. And on the display of the shop was a beautiful mannequin wearing a sari. And the sari was so attractive. This lady, she loved it. But she saw the price. It was too much for her, beyond her budget. So she walked away to the office. Entire day, she was thinking of that sari only. Next day, she again passed by the same shop and she saw the same sari. Again, she lost another day. The mind was just not able to focus on her work. The third day, she walked straight into the sari shop. And she told that fellow, sales guy, I want that sari. So the sales fellow went and got her a fresh piece, same color, same pattern, same material, same design. And he gave it to her, packed piece. She said, no, I want the sari that is on that doll. That fellow said, come on, it is the same sari, exact same sari. It is a fresh piece. He said, no, I want that one only that is on that doll. Customer is always right. So this fellow went, removed the sari from the doll, packed it and gave it to her. She said, sorry, I don't have money to buy it. This guy got furious. He said, why did you make me work so much? She said, I lost 2 days because that sari was distracting me too much. So I said, I can't lose another day. So I said, I want to do something about it. Get the sari off that doll. So the nature of the mind is just like a child. Just like a small child runs from here to there. Something or the other he keeps doing, isn't it? Jumps up, plays, runs here and there. If you really want to understand your mind, just observe children, how they behave. You'll understand a lot about your own mind. That's exactly how our mind is. So when we look at the child, we'll say, Are, what stupid things this child is doing? We'll actually laugh at the child also. Seems to be so innocent and so stupid, so naive. Interestingly, that's exactly what we end up doing on a mental level. So a child is innocent, but is the mind innocent? The answer is no. Arjuna is saying, Chanchalahi mana Krishna, Pramati, mind is flickering. And not only that, but it is an enemy, not innocent like a child. Don't think the mind is innocent like a child. The mind is not. The mind is a big enemy. And if it is not checked, it will lead to a spiritual death. So here, so the first quality of the mind that Arjuna speaks about is chanchal, restless. The second quality of the mind that Arjuna is speaking about is very, very interesting. So like if you look at the children, I'm just showing you some pictures of what children can end up doing due to their restlessness. And you look at these pictures, very interesting. You'll understand a lot about how our mind behaves. This guy is trying to act like Spider-Man. And look at this child. Very creative ways of expressing his creativity on the dog. And look at this child. Very interesting way of, there are two children, by the way. And look at this guy. What is he trying to do? So imagine, this is what our mind is capable of. These are the kind of ideas that the mind ends up giving us, and really, really strange, dangerous, and very, very critical ideas mind gives us. And that's why, if you look at some of these ideas that I've been just showing you all, what small children can do, it's nothing but death, isn't it? That's the nature of the mind. It just gives you some strange ways of functioning in life. Restless. But that's not the only problem of the mind. Arjun says, Chanchalai mana Krishna pramati. Pramati is the next problem of the mind. It is turbulent. If one trusts a madman or a fool, he's surely doomed, isn't it? Now imagine somebody is totally mad, complete, mad person. And you decide that I want to trust this fellow. What do you think will be your situation in some time? So once a madman wanted to reach the riverbank and asked someone, the way leading to the riverbank. The man replied that if you follow a particular path, it would lead into a banyan tree. Then the road adjacent to it will lead to the riverbank. So after reaching the banyan tree, the mad person, instead of treading the path adjacent to the banyan tree, climbed the tree and reached on top of it. From there, he slipped and fell. Somehow he caught a branch and he was hanging on the branch now, And then he started cursing the man who told him the wrong way. Now, who is responsible for the situation in which he is? Is the person who told the way responsible? He is, isn't it? So now he was hanging over there. After some time, he saw a man riding an elephant. And he called this man who was riding an elephant for help. And this person who was on the elephant decided to help this mad person. So he this fellow who was on the elephant caught the legs of this mad person. And as soon as he caught the legs of this mad person, the elephant walked further. And this guy who was hanging, he was hanging on the leg of the mad person who was hanging from a tree. And both of them now were hanging from the tree, basically. More trouble, So already one mad person is hanging from the tree. Now this guy, in an attempt to help that mad person, he's also hanging from the tree. So the mad person who is hanging from the tree originally, he told the fellow who was below, hanging on his leg, he said, why don't you sing some raga to attract attention of people who are in the nearby villages? And the fellow below, listening to this mad person, started singing with using different alaps and different tunes. He started singing songs. Then this mad person thought, this person is singing so sweetly, but there is nobody to accompany him and give him some tal. So he said, I should do that. And he began to clap. He left the branch of the tree, clap. And both of them fell down. So this is what will happen if you trust the mind. The mind is absolutely mad. And it's almost like a flood water. Pramathi, the word pramathi means turbulent. Imagine there is a flood of water coming in and there's no dam. What will happen? The water will just wipe out villages, isn't it? So the intelligence is like the dam that stops the mad mind from acting. I'm sure all of us have experienced this, isn't it? In its madness, the mind gives us so many ideas. Imagine if we execute every idea of the mind, where would we be? Suddenly, the mind sees something on Amazon. It says, "I'll buy it." Suddenly, the mind sees something in a shop. It says, "I'll buy it." Suddenly, he sees one property. He'll say, "I'll buy it." So the mind just gives you crazy ideas. And if you listen to all the ideas of the mind, you are going to be in big trouble. And therefore, you need a floodgate. You need a dam of intelligence to prevent the mind from just taking you in all directions. The third quality of the mind Arjuna speaks about is balavat. The idea of balavat means strong. There are some people who have great power, and the mind also has great power. The mind is also very strong. But that mind that is very strong has to be utilized in the right way. If it is not utilized in the right way, it will lead to a lot of destructive things. Like there was one professor in IIT, and this person, he loved to make students fail. And he would set a paper in a very interesting way. The first question, there will be 4 or 5 questions in the paper. The first question, mathematics, very complicated question. And the answer of that first question will be the number to be used in the calculation for the second question. And the answer of the second question will be the number to be used for the calculation of the third question. And the answer of the third question will be the number to be used for the calculation of the fourth question, like that. And then he would say, go and find answers. You ask anyone, consult any person, you try to solve this problem. And he loved to see people fail, because he was very, very sure nobody can answer this question. Now imagine if someone with intelligence and with such a strong mind decides to destroy somebody. He can do anything, isn't it? So the mind is not just restless. It is not just it is not just turbulent, but it is strong, balavat. If there is a field, say for example, there is a garden, a beautiful garden. And in that beautiful garden, a goat walks in. What happens to the garden? The goat eats little leaves here and there and all that. It will spoil the garden a little bit. But imagine if a elephant walks in. What happens to the garden? Totally messed up. But imagine a mad elephant walks in or a drunk elephant walks in. What will happen to the garden? Totally gone, isn't it? The mind is not just restless. It is not just turbulent, but it is balavat, strong. That's the problem. So the mind is not just mad, but it's powerful also. And it is not just powerful. Arjun is saying one more thing. Dridam. Dridam means obstinate. Ziddi, you know. The mind will not accept anything easily. Therefore, the mind is always to be kept under observation and engaged properly. So Arjun is saying, Tasyaham nigraham manye. He's saying, I can control. Tasyaham nigraham means I can control the raging wind. Ordinarily, raging wind cannot be controlled by anybody. A hurricane or a tornado, when it comes in, the government officials only tell you vacate the city. There is no way you can control the raging wind. But Arjun is saying, I have weapons to control the raging wind. But my mind is beyond my power. This helps us understand the power of the mind. So the nature of the mind is so powerful, it can take over the body. I'll give you a small story. I'm going to narrate a very small incident, which was told to us by our teacher Radhanand Maharaj, and he observed it himself. There was one very rich and very aristocratic lady traveling in a flight. And this lady is traveling business class, very sophisticated looking, and very seemingly cultured, very aristocratic in her behavior, very regal in her behavior and demeanor, dressing sense, etc. She got off the flight and came to the belt, where the luggage is, a conveyor belt. And as she was going to pick up her luggage, just reaching out to pick up her luggage, another person by mistake reached out to the same luggage. And two people pulled the bag at the same time. In the process, one small mishap happened. She had long nails in her fingers. One long nail of hers snapped. If your nail is long, it might crack a little bit, right? So in the process of pulling, that one top part of the nail snapped. And her long nail broke. It's not that it was bleeding or anything like that, just that tip of the nail broke. Oh my God. After that, she became a totally different person. She was giving the worst of bad words that anyone can ever think of, and loudly screaming at the top of her voice. Created a massive scene over there. Now, if you and me, our nails get cut, I don't know if you'll really react in this way. Who cares? Nail can grow back, isn't it? But the nature of the mind is that it creates illusions. It creates a strange way of looking at things and dealing with things. She identified so much with her external self that she totally lost control over that situation. And she flipped. She was so upset and angry. If you do not have control over the mind has control over you. If you don't control your mind, the mind controls you. Therefore, Krishna says, your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. A mind that is in control is your best friend. And the mind that is out of control is the worst enemy. So here we are doing an analysis of how the mind functions. Let me explain to you two very important roles of the mind. The first very, very important activity of the mind is to hold past impressions. Mind is like a sponge. Just like in a sponge, you drop one drop of ink, the sponge holds it. You drop another drop of ink, the sponge holds it. You put a third drop of ink, the sponge holds it. The sponge holds each and every impression. Similarly, whatever happens to us in our life, is held as an impression in the mind. Whatever we experience in our life, it is held as an impression in the mind. Like, for example, you eat a samosa, it's an impression stored in the mind. The next time you see a samosa, mind will remember past impressions. You have a beautiful conversation with a friend, the mind remembers that impression. You go on a long drive and you have a great experience, the mind remembers, holds that impression. So each and every impression that is dropped into the mind is held by the mind, and these get stored over a period of time. And all those past impressions make up the container of your mind. And it's hundreds and thousands of impressions. Imagine you only had so many negative impressions. What will happen? The result will always be negative. It's like many, many drops of ink, and you squeeze it. What happens? Ink flows. You can't expect honey to flow, isn't it? Your mind is made up of many past impressions. The second property of the mind is called as future desires. So the mind has the ability to be in the past, and especially the mind laments about things that have happened in the past. And the mind can imagine things that are going to happen in the future. So it hankers for future and it laments for the past. So this is the nature of the mind. So the nature of the mind is very complicatedly stuck between the past and the future. So either it is running to the past or it is running to the future. So when it is running to the past, it usually gets stuck in that information that seems to be painful. The mind selectively processes out all that information that is good and holds on to that information that is painful. So we call it as lamentation for the past. And we call the future as hankering for the future. We want a certain type of lifestyle, a certain type of, space that we want to be in mentally. We want a certain type of experiences that we've still not had in life. So the mind is running either to the past or the future. So the way our mental structure works is in a very interesting flowchart. So I'm going to show you all this flowchart. I'm going to share and discuss this flowchart with you all. If you all understand this flowchart well, there is a lot that you'll understand about how your mind functions well, right? And this flowchart is a very powerful way in which habits get formed in our life. This flowchart actually explains a lot about how we develop certain habits in our personal lives and why those habits are so stuck and ingrained in us, and how the mind has a role to play in development of those habits. So let me start by, just one second, I'm just trying to find a pointer here. Anyone has any idea where you find pointers? If anybody knows how to find a pointer in the Can you all see my mouse moving?
Guruji, you click right side of your mouse. So there you will get a pointer. Right side.
Okay, got it. Super. Thank you very much. Okay. So yes, now the pointer has come. Okay. Thank you. Over, I don't know, Balkrishna, is that you?
Vadiraj Guruji.
Vadiraj, thank you. Okay, great. So let me just explain this flow chart. You can please watch my pointer, which will help you understand where I am. Okay. So everything begins with thoughts, but thoughts come from objects. So the mind looks at something. So any kind of object, for example, let's just take some object like, say, for example, like this story that we're talking about of this lady who was very attracted to that sari. So that sari is that object that she was attracted to. That sari led to a thought. So when she saw the object, it leads to a thought. And from that thought comes desires. When you develop desires, the natural result or natural hankering when you desire something is that you want to associate with it. The result of having desires is you want to associate with that. So this lady, 2 days, she saw the object, she had thoughts, the thoughts led to desires. And the third day she said, I need to go and do something about it. Third day she went and actually had an association with the sari, That means she actually went to the inside the shop and, so she took some action, isn't it? So whenever you have, when you see a particular object that you very strongly hold in your heart, it leads to thoughts, it leads to desires, you associate with that object, and then you take action. Whenever you take an action, there will always be a reaction to it. Like, say, for example, let's look at another example. Say, for example, a young boy looks at a cigarette and he has a thought. Many of your friends who have been smoking, they convince him that cigarette smoking is cool. So he is seeing that object many times. He is developing some thoughts and his friends are converting those thoughts into desires for him. And one day, after many such associations with the object and with thoughts, he has desires and he decides that I want to try. That's where the action begins. When he tries, there's a reaction. So sometimes the reaction is good and sometimes the reaction is bad. If the reaction is bad and he decides that I will never do it again, so that sends a mental or a psychic impression back into the mind. So when he has a reaction which is bad, he hates it. It leads to an impression in the mind. Remember one of the things that we spoke about, the mind has the ability to store impressions. If the impression is bad, it goes back and gets stored as bad experience. The next time he sees a cigarette, next time he sees the object, immediately the mind will tell him, give him the thought, bad idea. Suppose he has had a very good experience with it and he somehow felt very good after smoking the cigarette. The mind has again a impression which is positive. The next time he decides to do it, the experience, the impression that will come in the mind will be go for it. So the reaction usually is at two levels. There is a mental, psychic level of reaction. There's a physical level of reaction. The psychic level leads to an impression, and the physical level leads to temporary pain or pleasure. So in some experiences, he experiences pleasure. In some situations, he experiences pain. Those situations where he experiences pleasure, those are the situations where the mind takes an impression which is powerful, positive. And then it leads to a constant. This is where habit formation happens. If this loop continues again and again and again and again, it becomes a habit. But if somehow he's able to break out of this loop and he comes out, then it doesn't become a habit. So you look at every single habit that you have formed in your life, good and bad, it is a loop that forms such habits. And therefore, um, there is another factor that helps us deal with these habits in the right way. The factor that helps us deal with this, with the habits in the right way, is known as intelligence. So all of us have both mind and intelligence inside us. The both are parts of the subtle body. The role of the intelligence is determination and discrimination. These are two roles of the intelligence. The roles of the mind are, if you remember, we spoke about impressions and we spoke about desires, past impressions and future desires. And if you look at what the role of the intelligence are, the roles of the intelligence are determination, discrimination, and decision making. These are three roles of the intelligence, basically. Willpower is a role of intelligence, basically. So, so when someone decides that I want to do something, where does the determination come from? Determination comes from intelligence. There are so many people who decide to do so many things, and where do they end up doing it? I have a friend of mine who, many years back, I went and gave him my fifth or sixth book when I wrote. I went and offered. I told him, I just wrote this book. I would like to give it to you. He looked at it and he told me, I've been wanting to write a book for the last 20 years. He's just been wanting to write. He never really put the effort to actually do it. There are so many things we decide and we want to do. So many of us want to do exercise on a daily basis. Where do we end up doing it? We hardly end up doing it, isn't it? So there are many people who are wanting to do something but are never able to do it because they lack determination, which essentially means their intelligence is not strong enough compared to the mind. The mind is powerful, it dictates. And the mind always dictates based on past experiences. And if you decide, I want to exercise, the mind will tell you difficult, leave it, painful. You remember, you used to have so much pain in your legs and in your muscles, forget it. The mind will tell you based on pleasure and pain, past impressions. And based on past impressions, you take decisions if you are purely taking based on mind. But intelligence doesn't do that. Intelligence is clever. Intelligence doesn't care for past impressions, but it cares for what is right and what is wrong. Discrimination. Intelligence is about determination. It's not about pain and pleasure. It's about what is to be done, what is right. And when you strengthen your intelligence, you are able to take good decisions and you are able to be effective. Mind will tell you, why you're chanting so much? Forget it. Don't you remember you go to sleep every time you chant? Forget it. Past impression is bad. But intelligence tells you how many times your teacher told you, don't listen to your mind. Chant anyways. This is the role of decision of the intelligence, isn't it? If you listen to the mind, you don't chant. But you listen to the intelligence. Intelligence gives you determination to keep focused on whatever you need to do. The mind will only get into experiences of impressions. Good impression means do it. Bad impression means don't do it. But tell me, how many things we should actually be doing based only on impressions? If it is only based on impression, no child will ever go to school. Isn't it? None of us will ever do anything good in our lives. Because, who will go to office on a daily basis if it is just based on impressions? If you just listen to the mind. Because you listen to the intelligence, you push aside the impressions, push aside feeling of good and bad, and you do what is needed. And that is a role of intelligence. The question now is, how do you strengthen the intelligence? How do you strengthen the intelligence? Because the mind dictates too much to us. The mind is is a very conditioned mind. Just like I've given you all the example of how the elephant, when it's tied up, when it is small, it is tied to a big chain and a powerful pole. But as the elephant grows bigger and bigger, the size of the pole becomes smaller and smaller. The size of the chain becomes smaller and smaller. But the elephant, once in his childhood, it is conditioned to think that pole and chain means I can't do anything about it. Till the end of its life, the elephant never tries to do anything about it. Why? Because it has told itself, pole and chain means I can't do anything about it. Our mind is conditioned to many things. These are programs that are conditioning our minds. And the only way that we can actually deal with these conditionings is if we can break free from these conditionings. If we can break free from these conditionings, only then we can get out of the conditionings of the mind. And so the question now is, how do I break free from these conditionings? How do I break free from the conditionings of the mind? Which is why Krishna is going to give us a solution. So Arjuna has presented the problem. Now Krishna in the next verse, this is verse number 35 of the 6th chapter, he's going to give us a 2-point formula of how to deal with our conditionings. The 2-point formula, how to deal with all our conditionings of the mind and how to strengthen the intelligence. So Krishna is saying in verse number 35, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Asamshayam Mahabhavo, Mano Durnigraham Chalam, Abhyasena tu Kaunteya, Vairagya cha Grahyate. Vairagyena tu Grahyate. So he said, let's break down this verse and try to understand what Krishna is trying to say. And this verse of Bhagavad Gita is the most powerful advice you will ever get on dealing with your mind. This is the most powerful advice you will ever find anywhere in the world on dealing with the mind. And anyone who tells you anything about mind control will be based on this formula only that Krishna is trying to say, right? So let us understand what Krishna is saying. Asamshaya Mahabaho. So the word Asamshaya means undoubtedly. And he's saying Arjun Mahabaho. He's calling Arjun, oh mighty armed one. So he's saying, undoubtedly, what you're saying is right. Mano Durnigraham Chalam. He's saying the mind, Durnigraham means it's difficult to control. And Chalam means it's flickering. The flickering nature of the mind is very difficult to control. He's saying no doubt about it. But he's giving a solution. He's not just accepting Arjun's problem, but he's actually helping Arjun deal with this problem. He's saying, Abhyasena tu Kaunteya, Vairagya cha Grahyate. So he's saying Abhyasa means by practice. And Vairagyena means detachment. Grahyate means it can be controlled. So he's saying it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So now, what is this practice that Krishna is speaking about? So the 2-point formula that essentially Krishna is speaking about is Abhyasa and Vairagya. These are two things that Krishna is introducing us to help us understand how do you control the mind. So the first thing when he's saying practice, what essentially is he talking about? Essentially, Krishna is talking about pulling back the mind. That's the practice that he's talking about. So, practice, it keeps the mind engaged. So, if the mind is not engaged in positive, it turns towards negative. So here, so if you look at some of the most powerful people in the world, whoever have really succeeded in their life, they've succeeded simply because of practice. So now you look at Tiger Woods, you look at some of the most successful singers in the world, some of the most successful sports people in the world, one of the most successful musicians in the world, painters, writers, anything. You look at some of the most powerful people in the world who have got any form of success, it is simply because of practice. It is said, if you practice anything 10,000 times, you become an expert at it. The number 10,000, actually it's not times, it is number of hours. 10,000 hours of practice. It's not times. 10,000 hours of practice. So whatever you have practiced for 10,000 hours, you become expert in it. Now, typically, to be able to practice anything for 10,000 hours, it takes about 10 years. So for you to become expert in anything, you need to practice that particular thing for 10 years at least. And the number of hours that you need to put in to be able to really become successful and powerful at it is at least 10,000 hours. So now, what is this practice that Krishna is speaking about? So Krishna is speaking about going deep in the process of sadhana. Like say, for example, when we are, I'm just giving you some examples where you can practice on a daily basis. Like say, for example, when we're chanting the holy names of the Lord. So literally everything you do can be a practice for mind control. I'm starting with the example of chanting, and we can extend that example to other things in our lives also, right? So the moment you start chanting, what happens? What is typically that thing that happens? The moment you start chanting, the typical thing that happens is that your mind wanders. What is the practice that Krishna is speaking about? Pull back the mind and focus on the holy name. You're working on your desk on some project, mind wanders. Pull back your mind and focus. You're talking to someone, you're having a conversation with someone, the mind wanders. Pull back your mind and focus. You're trying to eat food, your mind wanders. Pull back your mind and focus. Anything you do, the natural way the mind functions, it wanders. Abhyasa means pull back your mind and focus. When you're chanting the holy names of the Lord, mind will give you 10 different things, 10 different ideas. Just tell your mind, wait, pull back and focus on the holy name. So as I said, if you remember, I spoke about how the mind runs into the past and hankers into the future, isn't it? When you're chanting the holy name, the mind is either thinking about what you've already done or what you have to do. Some of the best ideas in the world come during chanting. The solution to the biggest problems of life come during chanting only. All other time, no ideas come. But the moment you start chanting, you get solid ideas about how to solve people's problems and your own problems in life. What Krishna is trying to tell you? Pull back your mind and focus. Simply, if you do this on a daily basis, we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, pull back your mind and focus. That will become a habit for you in every other aspect of life. So if you're practicing in one aspect of your life, it becomes a habit in all other aspects of your life. So if you're working on something, your mind is running into something else. You're thinking, what notification would have come? Pull back your mind and focus. You're talking to someone, suddenly you're thinking what messages come. Pull back your mind and focus. You're reading a book, suddenly you feel, what is happening in my neighbor's house. Pull back your mind and focus. You're eating food, and while you're eating food, you're trying to do something on your phone. Pull back your mind and focus. So this is the simplest solution that you can get to be able to focus on what you're doing at that point. This is called ultra focus. And that kind of ultra focus is what gives us powerful results in the future. 10 minutes of ultra focus is better than 4 hours of unfocused work. And it is really true. There are so many people when I share with them what I've been doing and over the last few years, last 4 or 5 years, the amount of work that has happened in my own life and the amount of work that I've achieved, the amount of things that I've achieved, people are wondering, do you have more than 24 hours? I tell them I don't have more than 24 hours, but I only know how to focus when I work. Whatever I do, I try my best to implement this particular solution that Krishna has given us. Abhyasa. Pull back your mind and focus. And it all begins with focusing on chanting the holy names nicely. If you are able to chant the holy names nicely, if you spend those 1-2 hours a day chanting very nicely, the effect of that, the power of that will be in all other way, other aspects of your life. But if that 1-2 hours that you're chanting, that you are distracted, it will reflect on all other aspects of your life also. So abhyasa is the basics of spiritual life. And the second thing that Krishna speaks about is very powerful. Abhyasa means practice. And Krishna, the second thing he speaks about is vairagya. So vairagya means detachment. So now when Krishna is saying vairagya, what is he talking about? Is he talking about giving up something? Actually, he's talking about something much more higher than that. You know what Krishna is talking about when he's saying vairagya chagrayate? Krishna is actually talking about creating the right environment and giving up the wrong environment. Vairagya means detachment, but vairagya doesn't mean detachment from different things. It's about detachment from the wrong environment. There are many things in the environment of your life. If it is there, it is not going to allow you to focus. Imagine you're chanting the holy names of the Lord, and there's a TV right in front of you on. How do you think you're going to focus? And no matter how much you practice, how do you think you're going to focus? If you are working on something serious and notifications keep popping up from your phone constantly, how do you think you're going to focus? Is it even possible to do that? So, imagine you are doing some very serious work. Can you go and sit in a bar where there's loud music going on and think that I will finish my serious work in 1 hour in the bar? You think it's possible? Impossible. It is impossible for you to focus there. So, of course, eventually, if you become very powerful, you can focus anywhere. That's a different story. But the point is that for you to begin your journey of focus, you need to create the right environment for yourself. And to be able to create the right environment for yourself, you have to give up the wrong environment. That's what detachment is about. So when Krishna is saying vairagya, he's not talking about giving up on external stuff. He's talking about giving up the wrong frameworks in your life. Like say, for example, if you're chanting the holy names of the Lord, first, choose the right time to chant. Before 9 a.m., no one calls anyone, at least, hopefully, Before 8 a.m., 100% no one calls, right? All the beeps and all the notifications and all the calls and all the things start coming after 9 a.m., basically. So if you start chanting the holy name at 9 a.m., impossible to focus. So just by selecting the right time, you get such a possibility of focusing, isn't it? Vairagya simply means select the right time for you to focus. And Vairagya also means the environment. So if you need to do some serious work, if you need to, like a student has to complete a syllabus, study for an exam the next day, some serious work has to be done. First thing, even before you practice, create the right environment for yourself. Close a room. Make sure nobody is disturbing you. Make sure there are no telephones there. Make sure there are no, PlayStations in that room. Make sure that, you don't have an iPad in that room. So if you are, if you're creating the right environment for yourself, it's much easier to focus. Or make sure you're not doing co-study with a talkative friend. You call a talkative friend saying that we'll do study together. Gone. Wrong environment. So detach yourself from the wrong environment. That's what it means. Detach yourself. Vairagya simply means detachment from the wrong environment, from the wrong things that create a situation of unfocused attention. So when you do these two things, abhyasa and vairagya, at the same time, then it becomes very, very easy for the intelligence to become strong and for the mind to focus. So Krishna, essentially what he's talking about is he's giving us a way to train our mind. So let me explain to you Krishna's proposal how to deal with the mind through a very simple example about the taming of a lion. So this example is a very interesting way of looking at how the mind has to be tamed. And the lion is a very apt example simply because the lion is so powerful, isn't it? The lion is wild, just like the mind which is in the jungle, A mind that is uncontrolled is like a wild lion. It's a king, and it's used to be the king of the jungle. What is the jungle? Jungle is our own system. So the mind is the king of the jungle so far. And now we're actually talking about controlling the mind. And I can tell you one thing for sure. Your mind is not happy that you're listening to this lecture. And your mind is giving you 100 different reasons why you should be running away right now. The mind is giving you some 100 different reasons why this fellow is talking all stupid things. Don't listen to him. It will never work. The nature of the king is that the king doesn't want to be tamed. That is the nature of a lion, basically. But if you want to tame a lion, there is a process. And I'm going to share with you all the process of taming of the lion. And that's exactly what Krishna is telling you in this particular verse of the Gita. What is the process of taming of the lion? The first process of taming of the lion is that put him in a cage. What is the cage? The cage it's like a fence system. We call it as regulative principles of freedom. The cage means there are some principles, do's and don'ts. That's a cage. Right now, the mind is in a free jungle, free world. In a free world, there are no rules and regulations. Today, the mind says, I want to see movie late night. Okay, no problem. Tomorrow, the mind says, I'll get up late in the morning. They say, okay, no problem. The mind says, I want to eat pizza. They say, no problem, no problem. I want to drink Coke and I want to drink Sprite. I say, no problem, no problem. Today, I don't want to do anything. Okay, no problem, So this is the free world we are used to. This is the free world the mind is used to. The mind says, I want to wear this clothes, no problem. I don't want to wear this clothes, no problem. I want this phone, no problem. I don't want to talk to this person, no problem. The mind has been all this while a free king in the jungle. The moment you decide you want to control it, first put it in a cage. The first thing when you put it in a cage is, I'll sleep at this time. I'll get up at this time. I'll not eat this. I'll not drink this. I'll not do this. I will chant every day in the morning. It's a fence. You're putting the powerful king into a fence, into a cage. What happens when you put a lion into a cage? Something very interesting happens. The lion gets angry. The moment the lion is put from a free jungle into a cage, the lion gets angry like mad. Never ever go next to a lion that has just been caged. It is the wildest ever. So the moment you put a lion in a cage, the first 3 days, no one looks at the lion also. The lion is angry. It is hitting the cage. It is roaring like mad. It is trying to kill someone, but it can't do anything. Why? It is in a cage and nobody is looking at it also. So the first step in training your wild mind is put it in a cage. That means decide rules and regulations. Decide that I will follow a particular type of lifestyle no matter what happens. The moment you do that, the mind will start revolting. You know what you're supposed to do that time? Don't look at the mind. Don't care for it. Continue doing what you have decided. Don't care for it. The mind will say, no mood today to chant. Don't care for it. The mind will say, no mood to attend lecture. Don't care for it. The mind will say, I want to eat whatever I want to do today. Don't care for it. Decide something and stick to it. And you need to stick to this for a particular duration of time. Typically, in my observation, once you decide that you want to do something spiritual and serious about it, 6 months to a year is a duration that which you have to stick to it no matter what. No matter what. Never deviate for 6 months to a year. For the lion in the jungle, the 3 or 4 days, they don't feed anything to the lion. They don't give it food. They don't give it water. They don't care to look at it also. The problem with us is that we feed the mind too much. We are over affectionate to the mind. Whatever the mind wants, we feed it. We treat it like a pet. Without understanding, it is the most powerful enemy that you are nourishing by feeding anything and everything it wants. You're making it more and more powerful. The first thing that you do to the mind is starve it. And when the lion gets starved for 3 or 4 days, over a period of time, the lion starts feeling weak. And after a few days, only when somebody walks by, the lion gets up and roars. And after that also, they don't bother. After 4 or 5 days, the lion understands, I am going to be dead, unless these guys feed me. So the lion kind of really weakens down, sobers down, and then this fellow enters. The ringmaster enters into the cage of the lion. And then he throws a meat in front of the lion. The lion is running to jump at the meat. The ringmaster hits a whip and doesn't allow the lion to eat that meat. Then the lion understands the ringmaster in his hand is a whip. That whip means I can't do anything. If I want to eat food, I need to listen to this fellow. And that whip is the intelligence. The whip is the intelligence that will tell the mind, do this, don't do this. So first, starve the mind, don't feed it, cage it within regulated principles, decide that you will do something, you will not do something, and then starve the mind for quite a duration of time. And no matter what the mind shouts, no matter how much the mind hankers, don't feed it. And finally, when the mind really realizes that I can't do anything about it, and the mind decides that I have to follow this fellow, then bring the intelligence in, the whip. And the intelligence is a discriminating thing. What to allow, what not to allow. Then, by nourishing the mind with the holy names of the Lord, slowly the mind becomes purified. And the purified mind becomes your best friend. And then the mind doesn't need to be controlled after that. The purified mind doesn't need to be controlled, because the purified mind actually becomes a very good person. And the purified mind helps you in your pursuit of a spiritual life. The purified mind helps you in your journey towards perfection of your spiritual life. Till the mind is purified, till the mind is, an uncontrolled entity, it needs discipline. It needs a lot of systems in place. And once the mind becomes purified and it becomes, it understands what is right and what is wrong, then the mind becomes your best friend. It actually starts helping you in your journey. So first is abhyasa, practice pulling the mind back from everything that is going around. Second is create the right environment. And we spoke about how to create the right environment. So every day in the morning, no matter what, I will chant. Mind will keep telling you 100 different reasons. No matter what, I will chant the holy names of the Lord. No matter what, I will sleep at a particular time. Spiritual life is about discipline. If you're not ready to be following certain disciplines in your life, you're not meant for spiritual life. As simple as that. So if you're really serious about your spiritual life, you have to follow certain disciplines in your life. And the most important discipline is sleeping and getting up. And the second discipline is what you eat and what you don't eat. And the third discipline is what you do and what you don't do, especially in terms of chanting the holy names. So more important than the don'ts is the do's. So when we chant the holy names of the Lord very sincerely, the holy names actually help us purify the mind faster. So this is the way in which we slowly and steadily help, control our minds and help to reach a point where we can really deal with the four very powerful qualities of the mind, which is Chanchala, Pramathi, Balavat, and Dridam. These four qualities of the mind: restlessness, turbulence, obstinacy, and very intensely strong nature of the mind. You can overcome it by adopting Krishna's 2-point formula, which is Abhyasa, practice, and Vairagya, which is detachment, and by neglecting the proposals of the mind, by fencing it in a cage, as we spoke about. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. Any quick questions, comments, discussions, please?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. After a very, very long time, we got to see you, and here this is much more than what we really actually deserve. But thank you very much. Excellent.
Hari, thank you, Mohanji. Rakhi, yes.
I just have two things. One, if you could give the acronym for what we did today.
It's easy. EASY.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about the whole chapter's acronym?
Yeah, because when we're doing the chapter, when you're listening, though, then you don't actually give the acronyms.
Correct.
So
it's easy. EASY is the acronym for the entire.
And what does it stand for?
I'm just pulling it up. Wait, I'll show it to you.
Thank you so much.
This is the acronym. Oops.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. This is the acronym. Okay, Sunita ji, your question.
And then I have one more thing to ask.
Yeah.
Is like when I'm reading, your whole presentation that we were going through, it also doesn't it somewhere remind of chapter 2, verse 60 to 63 that you had spoken about?
Yeah, of course. So
is it like in some way, I mean, we are talking of the same, how step by step the degradation happens, and
correct.
Step by step how you can control it.
Absolutely.
So can we actually link these three
Very
verses
much.
with those two of chapter 2?
So technically, chapter 2 is a summary of the whole Gita. So whatever principles of Gita you find across the Gita, you'll find it in chapter 2 for sure. In essence. So Krishna presented everything in chapter 2, and then he elaborates it in all other chapters, essentially. So you're right.
Thank you.
Yes, Sunita ji.
Hi, Namaste Prabhuji. It's been so long since we've heard you, and I mean, of course, we hear you through your talks, but physically seeing you. So thank you so much for availing us this opportunity. I think I just had a good laugh on some of the things that you said, and I wanted to share that because when you say about your mind telling you reasons, I just laughed because it was so true of every reason it gives you as to why you shouldn't do this today, and then how you really need to psych yourself to do that, and then say, no, just go into. And I think your example of the lion and taming it, though I'm not one for having lions in circuses and things like that, but I think your example of that was just apt in terms of allowing us to understand that certain things need to be in place for this. It is difficult. I mean, though we make a practice of chanting every day, even then as you chant, you do feel your mind, you do notice your mind wandering. Yeah, it's not like it's just there, it's still wandering. And I think you got to force it back and say, okay, come back, and and do that. So is that also a natural thing, though you do chant every day, and with given time, this will get better?
Yeah. So ideally, the process of chanting, um, it gets progressively better as we get purified in our hearts. And over a period of time, sometimes it's over a whole lifetime that we get to develop taste for the holy names. So it is not just mechanically chanting, right? So that is one part of our spiritual lives. Chanting is one part of our spiritual life. But all other things that we do, so it's like 2 hours you chant nicely, but the 22 hours, the quality of your life that you live, it actually aids the 2 hours chanting the next day. So if somebody is chanting 2 hours and really living a very bad quality life for the next 22 hours, you can't expect the next day morning chanting will be very nice.
Sure.
So it's a lifestyle that we slowly adopt, basically. And we make our entire life very, very aligned with the principles of Krishna consciousness, so that it becomes so conducive for our growth, our spiritual growth, basically. So
but sometimes
it's about, there is one process, but to aid the process, that there is a whole lifestyle. So the process of chanting is one part of the system. But to be able to chant nicely, you need to also adhere to all other aspects.
Understand.
That's what the environment is about, right? So the practice that we're speaking about and the vairagya, the right environment, both of it together is important. So when we talk about practice, that's one part of it. And when we say why we are not able to develop the taste for the holy name, why we are not able to develop the right amount, so what about this? What about vairagya? What about the environment? So are we trying to create the right environment for us to be able to chant nicely? So both of it together is what works, in my humble opinion.
And then one more thing. So sometimes in your life, you make decisions based on your intelligence or what, maybe. And sometimes you give into your heart on certain things, So when you listen to your heart, is that more like an intuition, or is that more like your mind telling you what to do? So what's the difference there?
Yeah. So the beginning of our spiritual lives, when we are starting our spiritual lives, mostly it is our mind that is dictating.
Yeah.
And is telling us based on feelings, basically, impressions and hankerings. But as you continue practicing a spiritual life nicely and you get purified nicely, over a period of time, the Lord begins to guide you. That's the voice of Paramatma. That's intuition, you can say. So the beginning of our spiritual journeys, you can't expect intuition to happen because you have not invested in Paramatma as yet.
Right.
But as you invest in the Paramatma over a period of time, and as you invest your relationship, develop a relationship with God, then God takes responsibility for your life. And a part of the responsibility is He gives you the right kind of guidance from within.
Does it ever happen? I'm sure in your experience. Sorry, I'm taking on. I'm sorry to all the other participants, but will it ever? Can it happen? Or I've had some questions like in terms of you've decided to do this, you're going the right way. Or will it be if you suppose you want to stop it? I mean, you don't want to do it for some reason. Would that be considered as regression or progression in that term? Like someone is on the path of the spiritual journey, understood it, got into it, doing it for a couple of years, reaches a stage where you're not so sure now, you're suddenly, maybe for some other, whatever reason, have you had that people would want to change and go back into
usually it
not
happens
necessarily wrong things, but just stop a couple of things that they're doing? Is that
It usually happens due to 2 reasons, or rather 3 reasons, I would say. One reason is the mind tricks you.
Sorry.
That's the first reason. The first reason is the mind.
Sorry, I
tricks
didn't
you.
get you, Swamiji. Sorry. Can you please repeat what
Yeah,
you said?
I'm repeating. There are three reasons why this could happen.
Mm-hmm.
The first reason is the mind tricks you.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the most common reason why it happens. The mind tricks you, basically. The second reason is that you have possibly also made some offense against some devotees, or against the Lord also. So there is something known as aparadha or offense, is something that every devotee has to be careful about. So we sometimes offend others, especially great devotees. We offend them sometimes. When you offend great devotees, the Lord takes away, the desire in your heart to practice your spiritual life seriously. So sometimes you might just find that I don't have any more inclination and taste for chanting and taste for spiritual life. Maybe because I've done some offense, And a third reason why that could happen is because of some bad experience you've gone through. Like, say, for example, when you practice spiritual life, a lot of people feel, unfortunately, or rather wrongly, they feel that everything good only should happen to me in my life. Just because I'm practicing spiritual life nicely,
Yeah.
And then suddenly one bad thing happens. They don't blame their karma for it. They don't take responsibility for the bad that happens, but they blame God. So, I'm chanting so many days I've been chanting, but still this happened to me. Maybe, the process doesn't work. The process is not supposed to help you with your problems in life. That's not the point. Have I ever told you in any lecture of mine in the last so many months that you've been attending that your problems will get solved if you attend these lectures, if you chant over them? Never. That's not what Gita talks about at all. Gita helps you get the strength to deal with your problems. Gita doesn't solve your problems. Spiritual life, it doesn't solve your problems. It gives you strength to deal with your problems. And it gives you the ability to take responsibility for your actions and for your life situations, basically. So when people don't have the philosophical background and understanding behind it, then they misunderstand that because I went through a problem in life, spiritual life is not working, so they give it up. This is the third reason why people give up spiritual lives. So these are typically three reasons why people give up spiritual life. Other than these three reasons, there is no fourth reason why people should give up spiritual life. Technically, once you understand the philosophy of Gita properly, if you understand it systematically and properly, there is no way someone will give up Krishna consciousness. No way. And still, if someone does that, these are the three reasons why it happens.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Prabhuji, just one question, quick one. Can we have more such direct classes? I mean, this is more effective than listening, when you're listening, the mind is more chanchal, you're wandering, your mind is wandering. But when you're in front like this, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, sure. I'll plan more of it as much as I can, surely. Next class,
Thank
for
you.
sure, we're having a live class next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Very happy to be with all of you all once again. I'll catch you all next week. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Bye-bye.